It's April 28th in Las Vegas, and it could be a historic one for the green and white. If the Jets use their 4th and 10th selections, it would mark the 9th time in franchise history they had 2 first-round selections. And this year's 4th and 10th picks are the highest top 2 picks combined in Jets draft history. Finally, if the Jets use all their first 4 picks, it would be only the 3rd time since 1970 the Jets selected 4 times in the top 40. Welcome into our 2nd installment of the Jets Draft Countdown Series presented by Duncan. I'm Eric Allen. Coming up, we'll hear from Jets GM Joe Douglas, the Athletics' Dane Brugler, plus Caroline Hendershot and Ethan Greenberg. But let's start with Anthony Becht and Eric Coleman. Great to see you, fellas.
Good to be back.
Yes, great to be here.
All right, so let's start rolling. We talk about that draft capital. What can you say, Anthony, about what Joe Douglas has done via the trade routes, most notably sending Jamal Adams to Seattle and quarterback Sam Darnold to Carolina?
Yeah, both wins, right? I mean, he made the best of the current situation. You know, weren't going to pay Jamal Adams. Didn't feel like that was the structure of guy you wanted to be. Like building draft capital, getting young players and players that can play, right? Getting guys that you draft or free agents that can come in here, whether you use it for free agency through a trade, getting guys that can help this team now and get younger, I think it's big.
As we look ahead to this draft, those moves are about to pay off in a big way for this team.
It really worked out for the Jets, adding that capital. They got some depth. They're going to be able to bring some playmakers in here and really help this team thrive.
Joe Douglas loves moves. Do you think he'd be a great card player?
Absolutely. I mean, I could definitely see him at the poker table, you know, keeping that poker face, waiting to put his cards down at the right time. I think he would excel.
He's been tough with these GMs, don't you think?
Well, you know, he's done a nice job. He's got a great team around him. So I could see him, Rex Hogan, Chad Alexander, wearing sneaky different disguises, but they're all at the same table, and they're just working the other teams, right? Just taking advantage of them with some team play. But I think, yeah, he's done a good job.
Yeah, and now they're about to go to the table. With that being said, are you guys ready to roll the dice on the clock?
Let's do it.
All right, start up that clock. Anthony, you should be happy because we're talking offense this week. Would Zach Wilson have been the first quarterback selected had he come out this year?
I think he would be. I think he put a phenomenal final season to his career. I think it would have led the charge this year as well. You look at some of the guys coming out, I think there's some potential guys. There's some guys that coming off that weren't great seasons maybe the season before, and there's some hand issues with some of these guys. I think Zach Wilson would be a top guy.
So you're talking about Kenny Pickett there. Following the addition of Laken Tomlinson free agency will the Jets skip taking an offensive lineman in the first round for the first time in the Joe Douglas era?
Yes, I think that's a big possibility that they skip out on the first round. They have several draft picks in the second round and moving forward, so I think that there's going to be one taken. I think the first round is going to be for skill position.
AB, speaking of skill positions, is there a running back worthy of being taken in the first round?
Yeah, Breece Hall out of Iowa State. It's not a biased pick for me. He's been legit. Got a lot of tread on his tires, but man, he has been the best back in football the last couple years.
Anthony's son, Rocco, is a signal caller at Iowa State. We got to mention that. Eric, should the Jets use the number 10 selection on a wide receiver?
Why not? If they don't use it at number 4, use it at number 10. That'd be a great addition to add a number 1 receiver, add some speed to that already great wide receiver core.
Anthony, if the Jets don't take a receiver in round 1, who are the wideouts that could be available there at the top of the second at 35 and 38?
Yeah, John Dotson out of Penn State. Sky Moore, Western Michigan, 2'5", 10 guys with a tremendous amount of speed. Or you can go Christian Watson, North Dakota State, 6'4", long guy, can really take it deep.
All right, that clock is really moving. Eric, after addressing tight end and free agency, will the Jets be spectator at the position on draft weekend?
I can see them, you know, finding that diamond in the rough. They coached in the Senior Bowl. They found a couple of good players. You may see one later in the draft.
Oh, Anthony, you get the final word. What did you think of the Jets' pursuit of Tyreek Hill?
Listen, you take a shot at it. I don't like the fact that Kansas City gave him an option to pick either or team. I mean, usually it doesn't happen with organizations, but look, and they gave him a good offer. They could have got him. He chose Miami. Oh, well.
Great stuff. Sit tight because we're going to bring you back to talk about the latest mock drafts. The New York Jets draft party returns to MetLife Stadium on April 28th. Join the Jets to watch the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft live on the video boards and enjoy player autographs, locker room tours, and more. Tickets are free and available to download at nyjets.com/draft party. For more on day 2 of the NFL Draft, let's bring in Ethan Greenberg in the Athletics. Dane Brugler.
Dane, last year the Jets drafted wide receiver Elijah Moore at pick number 34. They have pick number 35 this year. So who are some similar players to Moore in that they could be drafted in the back half of the first round, but there is a chance they could slip through the cracks to be there for the Jets at the top of the second?
I think there's maybe three positions we could look at here. So, the receivers. Is there one or two of these guys that would fall a little bit? Whether that's Chris Olave, whether it's Jahan Dotson. Some of these guys, would they fall a little bit? And if they do, maybe the Jets would pounce. I'm really interested in the secondary as well, though. Is there another corner that they have a first-round grade on or an early second-round grade on who, an Andrew Booth out of Clemson? Maybe throw out David Ojabo as well from Michigan. And if the Jets are comfortable with the injury and the timeline of when he's going to have, until he's going to get back and healthy and contribute, David Ojabo is a name that's on the radar now that maybe you weren't talking about a couple weeks ago.
Dane, I'm going to put you on the spot again. If you could choose one player to be that guy to fall to 35 or 38, let me paint the picture for you. You're Joe Douglas on draft night. You're sweating bullets as the draft unfolds, crossing your fingers. Somebody's going to be there at 35 or 38. Who are you hoping is available there?
I would probably say one of these safeties, whether it's Dax Hill from Michigan or Lewis Seen from Georgia. I think two guys that are going to come in and really help the back end of your defense. Guys that can play the run really well. They can cover. They're really going to give you something. So I think those two guys would make sense. Both could easily go top 32. But if they were going to slip a little bit, I think the Jets would not be upset to see them on the board when they pick in round 2.
Dane, as always, your insight much appreciated. Very well done, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, thanks, Ethan.
You're watching the Jets Draft Countdown Series presented by Duncan. The New York Jets, we always run on Duncan. Joe Douglas has taken an approach that he describes as aggressive and not reckless this offseason. After a flurry of moves in free agency and a hunt for a cheetah, we talked to the Jets general manager at the NFL League meetings in Palm Beach, Florida.
Obviously, free agency is not over. If there's opportunities there, there's going to be, who knows what other opportunities will present itself in trade. But now you're zoning in on the draft, right? And that huge weekend in April that every fan loves. And, we're sitting here with picks 4, 10, 35, 38, and then we've got 5 more after that. It's a pretty unique, pretty cool situation to have 4 picks that high. There's a lot of meat left on the bone for our process, so to speak. We'll get back with the coaches in April, early April, and then they'll throw their evals in. They've spent a lot of time on these with these prospects on Zoom calls, workouts, pro days, getting their opinion, getting their insight, their feedback on all these players in the draft. It's going to be the biggest meetings that we have this offseason. Primarily because it'll be the next meetings with the coaches, but with what we have going on this year in the draft, the picks we have, it's a unique opportunity to add a lot of difference makers to this team.
For the full interview, make sure you are subscribed to the official Jets podcast. For more on the 2022 NFL Draft, let's bring in Caroline Hendershot and NFL Network's Cynthia Freeland.
Cynthia, a lot of mock drafts have the Jets picking between cornerback, pass rusher, and wide receiver. But do the analytics favor one position or a specific player?
Well, when I did my mock draft, and I just came out with my mock draft 2.0, literally like today as we are sitting here, and I went with corner as the first pick. Why? Because when you look at this division and you look at this conference, stopping the pass is absolutely the most important thing. So the best way to do that, especially given the fact that we've seen Coach Saleh be able to create really masterful defensive fronts, is to back it up with a lot of help on the back end. Now, I understand there was some addressing of this in terms of adding defensive backs in free agency, but I put Sauce Gardner, Ahmad Gardner out of Cincinnati, paired him with the Jets, and that created the most win shares for 2020.
Now, is there a player, analytically speaking, that maybe deserves more credit than he's getting at this point?
The one that really jumps off the paper to me is a safety. And if you look at Kyle Hamilton, who's a safety out of Notre Dame, and you look at how diverse he is in terms of he can stop tight ends, he's really good at blitzing, sideline to sideline, he gets there quickly in pads. I can measure with computer vision. He is very quick on the field. He's done kind of everything that's asked for. So this multi-purpose safety tool, that is something that is increasingly more important as we're seeing more college-style quarterbacks enter the league, as tight end has become an increasingly valuable position. and as we're seeing slot receivers become used more and more and more. And remember, like 10 years ago, if you were saying he's a slot receiver, he's a slot corner, it was kind of used in the pejorative. It wasn't used as like this guy's going to be a world beater.
Well, we're going to keep our eyes on those guys as we approach the draft, but thank you for all of your insight, Cynthia. EA, back to you.
The New York Jets Schedule Challenge presented by JetBlue is back. Win $100,000 by correctly predicting the exact order of all 17 games, including the bye week. Visit jetschedulechallenge.com for a chance to win and official rules. What happens in Las Vegas only happens in Vegas. For more on what could happen for the Jets in Vegas, here are Caroline Hendershot and Ethan Greenberg.
Thanks, EA. Now for our second week of mock draft breakdowns, we are going to compare two different ESPN mock drafts, one from the general manager perspective and one from the scout perspective. So let's start with the GM side of things with Mike Tannenbaum.
Wow, quick on the draw. Let's go. Let's dive right in.
Already spinning. He is picking wide receiver Garrett Wilson from Ohio State for the Jets. What do you think about that?
Well, first off, picking a wide receiver at number 4, I don't want to say is a popular pick, but it's sure gaining steam among mock drafts. Something to keep an eye on as the draft gets closer. But as a player, Garrett Wilson has been super productive at Ohio State. Taking a look at his career numbers here, we talked about the productivity. How about 2021? Career high, 70 catches, 1,058 yards, 12 touchdowns, averaging 15.1 yards per catch. Caroline, he only had 2 drops on 102 targets. He caught 89.7 of his catchable passes according to ESPN Stats and Information Tracking.
I mean, those are some good stats.
Good ratio.
You can't deny that. You can't deny that. Okay, so for pick number 10, Mike Tannenbaum is going with
all right. I see
defensive
where this
end
is going.
Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State for the Jets. How do you like that?
Well, let me start with this. I know he's listed as defensive end, and he was just that for Florida State. He did work out as a linebacker at the Combine, something to keep an eye on as he makes that transition. This pick makes total sense. Robert Saleh loves his defensive lineman. Johnson, one of this year's top prospects, and he exploded onto the scene this season after transferring from Georgia to Florida State. He was named the ACC's Defensive Player of the Year after leading the conference with 12 sacks, 18 tackles for loss. He had 18 and a half career sacks, all right, Caroline? 12 of them came this past season, and this guy has potentially the biggest draft riser since the Senior Bowl.
All right, let's head over to ESPN Matt Miller, which is the scout perspective of things.
Oh, we're going, Caroline.
Oh, they're kicking me along. All right, Matt Miller is giving defensive lineman TRAVON Walker from Georgia to the Jets at pick number 4. What do you like about TRAVON Walker?
Oh, well, Jermaine Johnson's former teammate, just a little side note, but Walker is a freak athlete. You're betting on his traits more than his production in this scenario, but he's 6'5", 272 pounds. He ran a 4.51 40-yard dash at the Combine. This is the craziest part. His RAS, which stands for a relative athlete score, was a 9.99 out of 10, which ranked 3rd among defensive ends from 1987 to 2022. All right, Myles Garrett also had a 9.99. Pretty good player in the NFL. How about a throwback, though? Javon Curse, 9.97. Do you remember his nickname? It was The Freak, which is exactly what Walker is, despite pedestrian sack numbers. 9.5 career sacks over 3 seasons, but 6 of them came in 2021.
I mean, like you said, the RAS number speaks for itself. That is a crazy number. Okay, so for pick number 10, Matt Miller is going to give the Jets wide receiver Drake London out of USC, who we spoke about in last week's mock draft.
Right, this pick right here, positionally, like we said last week, the player 2, seems to be one of, if not the most popular pick to the Jets, especially at pick number 10.
Now, what do you think about these drafts being opposites, where they drafted wide receivers versus defensive ends?
Well, it feels like that a lot of draft analysts are sharing a brain here in terms of defensive end, wide receivers, and we got to throw quarterback in the mix as well. We talked about Sauce Gardner, very popular pick for the Jets at number 4, but let me just put this into perspective. Jamar Chase was the 5th overall pick in 2021, and I don't think analysts believe someone of Chase's caliber at wide receiver is in this year's draft. However, in this scenario, I just want to say, you do have your pick of the litter most likely if you are Joe Douglas, because it's highly unlikely that a receiver goes before the 4th overall selection, whereas with defensive end, there could be a couple pass rushers off the board by the time the Jets are on the clock at 4. The wrinkle here, though, we don't know how the team ranks these guys. So potentially the Jets' top pass rusher could be on the board at 4, even if a couple names are called before that. All this to say, Caroline, I see both sides of the coin, and I'm really excited to see how it's going to play out on draft night.
Well, it's going to be interesting no matter what scenario happens, but it really is interesting with both of these drafts having opposite positions at 4 and 10. But I'll ask you, EA, what do you and the fellas think of it?
Thanks, Caroline and Ethan. Eric, ESPN's Matt Miller had the Jets taking TRAVON Walker number 4 overall. How tough of a prospect is Walker to evaluate, because he's got the physical traits that you want, but the production just wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, you look at him, 6'5", 272. He ran a 4.5 40 at that size. He's considered more of a run stopper than he is a pass rusher. But, you know, Anthony and I were talking about it. It's tough to evaluate guys who play around such greatness. I mean, they had a lot of great defensive linemen around them, the linebacker position. What is he going to do when he's the person that they're depending on to get off the field on 3rd down? Can he show up?
Yeah, I got to follow up right there. The Jets can't have enough quality defensive linemen. What do you think about Walker? Because he basically did play on an NFL defense.
Yeah, he did. It's not a red flag or anything. I mean, the kid clearly is a great player. It's just a matter, you know, can he be a guy that is going to be singled out now to ask him to do it all on his shoulders? You know, he's going to have some good talent around him, but in the league, you have to be special at that position. I do see him as a better run stopper, as a pass rusher. I don't know if that 40 time, which is really impressive at his weight, really stands out, and I see that in his play, right, as a pass rusher. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, again, he's going to be a good player. It's just a matter of fit, where he goes, and if it's the right piece for the Jets.
He's got freak skills. He could be a top 5 selection. Mike Tannenbaum, former Jets GM, has the green and white taking Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State, number 4 overall. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I talked about the receiving class in the last episode. I mean, the thing that's tough for me sometimes, how do you separate these guys? I mean, Olave and Wilson from Ohio State, like, what's the difference? Like, both of these guys are explosive. They can make big plays. You know, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to take a receiver as high in the 4 spot, but 10 is definitely an area. Guy that really intrigues me is the guy from Arkansas, you know, Burks. I think, you know, people talk about maybe he doesn't have the speed, but I see him at 6'3", 225 pounds. He's doing some jet sweeps and just taking it past the defenses of some real defenses in the SEC. And he took the top off the defense as well. He's an outside receiver. I don't know, man. You know, people think Arkansas receiver may not add up, but man, his film is starting to really intrigue me as a playmaker.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson really intrigues me, because he's such a fine route runner. Okay, gents, we're flipping this thing to the defensive side of the ball next week, so I know you're going to be happy. Thanks to all of those for watching as the NFL draft nears. We'll see you right here next week.